I hope you enjoyed Miriam Bat Yaakov's musical take on the Chanukah blessing that evokes a lot of these liturgical qualities that pertain to Marcia Falk's work. When I sat with Marcia at her home, we talked a lot about not only her own creative work, but also her translation work. Her Hebrew is very rich and wonderful, and she sees translation as a creative work, as I think many of us do. But translation for Marcia Falk is more than just work, it's an art for the senses. And in many ways, in her translated poetry, she's evoking this idea of bringing back the color, the tenor of the Hebrew, the very sort of unmediated effect of the Hebrew, the embodied nature of the Hebrew into the English translation. Out of her three poetry translation works, I've looked at two. I've read her book, The Spectacular Difference, which is her English translation to poems by Zelda. And when we talked about it, one of the interesting things she mentioned was that Zelda is an ultra was, I should say, an ultra Orthodox woman, and nevertheless, the poems drip with sensuality, with somatic experiences, with kind of like this involvement of all the senses. It's very beautiful and it's very palpable in the English translation. But I chose to share actually two short moments from her translation to the Song of Songs. Now, as many of the people watching this video know, our relationship with the Song of Songs as a work of biblical worth is complicated. And it's complicated ever since Rabbi Akiva said this is the holiest book and this is all metaphor and it's got nothing to do with erotica and it's got nothing to do with sex. And you read midrash after midrash in Shir Ha-Shirim Rabbah, and you find a lot of artistry and all kinds of cool intertextual things happening, but the whole thing is an enterprise that is removing the songs from their immediate erotic context. Um, and I think that what Marcia Falk is trying to do in her translation to the Song of Songs is to bring that back. And I'm going to provide two easy examples of that. Let's take a look. So here's one of them. מה טובו דודייך מיין, וריח שמנייך מכל בשמים. So you'll note that this phrase begins with matovu, which could be translated, this is good. But Marcia Falk goes a step further, and she says, your love more than one is enticing. Your fragrance is finer than spices. Using the terms enticing and fine evokes something more corporeal than using the word good or looking at matovu the way that we would look at the phrase matovu in the context of matovu oalecha Yaakov. This is feeding the somatic, the erotic, the embodied sense back into the song. And incidentally, the beautiful flower illustrations in the book are Marcia's work as well. Here's another example. This is a pretty short one. Ani yeshena velibi el. I sleep, but my heart stirs, restless, and dreams. So the simple English translation of the words Ani yeshena v'libi el are I sleep and my heart is awake. But here the heart is not just awake, the heart is staring with unfulfilled desire, which is going to be later a very important phrase in the rest of the poem. What I'm going to show you in the next little snippet in the Padlet is actually not Marcia Falk's creation. It's the work of Israeli voice artist Victoria Chana, who is one of my favorite artists. And she's performing the song from Song of Songs that starts with Ani yeshena v'libi el. And you'll get the same sense of this kind of restless, desirous angst and what she's doing with the words in her mouth. And while you listen to it, think about the fact that this English translation is trying, I think, to convey the same sensation of desirous restlessness stirring in the heart.